Hello and welcome to another episode of Anime Stop Motion Reviews. I am Anime, and today we will be taking a look at the recently released Diamond Select Marvel Select Iron Man Mark 85 from the motion picture film Avengers Endgame, the last Iron Man armor Tony Stark ever dons in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Unless that is, of course, if Robert Downey Jr. ever decides to return as an AI version of Tony Stark in a future film. As mentioned, this figure was just recently released this past week in comic shops around the US. Some e-retailers like Big Bad Toy Store have pre-orders still up for this figure, and perhaps other places as well, but my local comic shop is where I picked this guy up for about $26.50, but he should be around the $27 to $30 range in most retailers. Now this might be blasphemous for me to say, but I was not a big fan of the Mark 50 nanosuit from the Infinity Wars movie. But when I first saw pictures of the Mark 85 before Endgame was ever released, however, I was absolutely in love with this design. I have still not gotten around to getting the Marvel Legends version of this armor, as my Fat Thor Build-A-Figure still sits on my shelf, sadly, with no legs and only one arm, but I'll eventually get to that. As for Marvel Select's MCU figures specifically, I don't really buy every single MCU figure since I hate the fact that we usually only get 3 to 4 characters from a film if we're lucky, and oftentimes no villains. So I don't really double up on characters I already have. So for instance, I didn't buy the Iron Spider-Man armor because I already had the Homecoming suit, and they only released Bearded Cap, the Mark 50, Stormbreaker Thor and Groot, and the Iron Spider-Man from Infinity War, so then you'd have an incomplete set, in a scale that doesn't really fit with anything else really, unlike the Legends figures, which usually completes out the sets from the films for the most part, not always of course, but generally speaking. Of course, like I said, I love this design in this suit, so I had to double dip my Marvel Select Iron Man figures and grab this figure, so good job on Diamond Select's half for getting me to do that. Actually, I've grabbed all the Endgame Select figures up until now, with the nano-gauntlet Hulk and the armored Thanos figure. I wasn't planning on buying this set or whatever, but I just grabbed whatever was appealing to me. I would say my favorite Iron Man armors are probably this Mark 85 and the Mark 42 suit. Maybe I have a thing for the gold colors. Excluding the Mark 44 and 48 Hulkbusters, I'm curious though, what's your favorite Iron Man armor? Leave a comment below. But I digress. Going back to this figure, let's take a quick look at the outside packaging before we dive deeper. We have the standard Marvel Select large clear packaging denoting the Iron Man Mark 85 armor to the left. The Marvel Select branding is plastered in the corner at the top as usual. The Avengers Endgame movie logo is at the bottom half, and the shell maintains the same blue and white color scheme from the packages of the other two previous Endgame figures, nano-gauntlet Hulk and armored Thanos. The figure is in a neutral pose with a few accessories to the right side, and a diorama piece I did not expect to see behind the figure. On the left spine of the box, we have a large Avengers Endgame movie logo plastered across. On the back of the box, we have a product shot of the figure and a shot of the alternate snapping fingers forearm accessory, along with a little bio read-up about this particular suit. Credit for the sculpt is given to Gentle Giant Studios, and beneath the Iron Man info, we have a product shot of another figure from this set, the nano-gauntlet Hulk, although on this package, they refer to him as Smart Hulk. With the figure out of the box but still in the plastic backing, we can see that the figure comes in 2 plastic sheets, with the Iron Man figure and the accessories on the front and the diorama piece on a separate plastic on the back. Here he is out of the plastic with the alternate forearm attached, and my initial thoughts are that this figure looks very nice and aesthetically is very pleasing. The metallic reds really pop against the gold, which seems slightly more pulled back than the reds, but that makes for a nicer contrast. The figure itself feels much more premium than you might expect and has a nice weight and feel in the hands. Some things in the articulation work out very well, but others come up very short. We'll get into that later on. However, I feel that this figure pulls back a little too much on the accessories. The Mark 50 version, which is out for less at $24.95 at the Disney store, comes with extra hand weapons like 2 different sets of tonfas or nightsticks and an arm cannon. The Select Sandman figure was one of the best examples of extra accessories, and even the Captain Marvel figure wasn't too bad, but this figure doesn't come with any extra weapons such as the bladed hand or arm cannon or even the back cannon that Thor shoots lightning into when they team up against Thanos. I suppose they thought the back diorama piece would suffice in the accessories department, but honestly, it's a reused diorama piece from the Civil War figures and it doesn't quite fit in as neither the Hulk or Thanos comes with one. With the select Civil War figures back in the day, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Iron Man, they all came with these diorama pieces, and they would connect together to form a large set, like the X-Men Danger Room pieces do. I remember hearing that the prices on these figures would be going up, and with that would come more accessories and extras to justify that price hike. But after only, like 2 or 3 figures, it seems the Marvel Select line is going back to the way it was with the same amount of accessories. Except the price is just hiked up now, so it seems like that wasn't necessarily true, and I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's not cool with me. Obviously, I've already bought this figure, and don't get me wrong, I like this figure, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on what we are getting as it pertains to not only the figure itself, but the extras as well. Hell, even with the Captain Marvel figure, it seems they split the accessories between the Star Force version and the blue and red version, so I'm not sure what Diamond Select is doing. I'll be keeping a close eye, seeing as they've only released new MCU figures recently, with the last original figure being the Sandman, I think, so we'll see if they really mean what they say about justifying the price increase in this line, or if this was just a ruse. But as of now, adding an old diorama piece that seems like an afterthought and a few hands, albeit a couple like the Infinity Stone hands and snapping fingers that most people want, the whole thing seems kind of cash grabby and, to be frank, kind of lazy in some ways. If they had added even just an extra RDJ/Tony Stark head instead, that would have been better, since they gave us snapping finger hands, but he only does that with no helmet on in the film, so it's already kind of inaccurate. I'm not trying to be negative about this figure, but I just want to clarify some of my thoughts about this, since this is a review and I want to be honest with you guys. Anyways, those are some of my thoughts about the whole packaged deal, but the figure itself is still really good. So let's move forwards and we can take a look at some of the statistics first. So the figure stands at about 7 5/16 inches, which makes him about 18.57 centimeters. And since this is a 1/12 scale, that would make him about 6 feet 1 inches, or about 185.73 centimeters. And Iron Man here weighs in at about 134 grams, so if we scale that up to like 134 kilograms, that would make him about 295.4 pounds. For accessories, these are the default open hands that comes with the figure, not necessarily extra accessories per se, however I just wanted to take a closer look at them. They are mainly metallic red with a silver rim around the knuckles, and the repulsors are painted white with a very nicely subtle circular rim of blue inside them. He does come with a pair of fist hands very much in the same vein as the open hands, with the same clean painting on the knuckles and the repulsors. He includes a completely different forearm that has been affected by the Infinity Stones a bit. It's a little leaner because of it, with different lines running through and an open hand with the stones in place. The forearm is well sculpted with those lines, and the paint is clean. The hand, on the other hand, is not so clean. So the Infinity Stones comes in 2 versions, an open hand, which is the default on the forearm, and a snapping finger version. The paint is clean for the most part, except when it comes to the stones themselves. They look less like stones and more like different painted spots on the knuckles. The repulsors on the palms also lack the small blue paint in the regular open and fist hands as well. And the backdrop diorama is nothing new. Like I stated before, it came with the Marvel Select Civil War lineup. It comes pre-assembled. And here you can see how the figure scales to the diorama. If you've not seen this diorama before, no pegs or anything, just a flat base for the figure to stand on. Taking a closer look at the figure, starting off with a full look at the proportions and suit, the figure has some nice proportions. It looks slick and lean, but still very solid. Maybe a bit on the leaner side than the actual suit, but that's hardly noticeable if even. The metallic colors have a nice sheen and brightness to them, making them look like real metal, and small touches of blue are sprinkled throughout in a few spots, very precisely placed. From the side, you can see he has a very solid looking form. His upper torso is well shaped with his chest sticking out. His back pulls out as well, and his traps raise above the shoulders really nicely. Overall, he is nicely proportioned out. As you can see, his back and traps are well sculpted and proportioned with the rest of the back. His waist tapers in nicely, and his arms and legs are solid and well built. Nice large hands and calf-feet combinations. He has large ball pegs at the ankles, but these are well hidden with the lower leg armor. The blue lines around the eyes are precise and clean, unlike a lot of the Legends Iron Man helmets I've seen. Of course, your mileage may vary. This figure was cherry-picked from a couple, and I grabbed one with the cleanest paint apps overall. The side profile shows a nice combination of sculpt and painting. It's good enough, nothing too extreme though. You could nitpick if you wanted. It's not perfect, but also not noticeable. The paint overall is very sharp. Like I said, one could nitpick if they wanted. The arc reactor is white with just a little bit of blue, mainly around the 3 triangles on the outside and around the main triangle in the center. I've seen figures with more blue than white, however, so once again, it's one of those things that might not be so consistent from figure to figure, but I chose this one because of the clean and sharp paint apps, and I like the more white to blue ratio of the paint. Taking a closer look at the back, you can see how the paint apps are contained in the sculpted line work. They are pretty clean for the most part. The silver paint seems the most muted of the 3 metallic paints. Just a closer look at the legs, just clean line and paint work throughout. There isn't any marbling of the plastic anywhere that I can see, but that always seems to be more of a Hasbro thing than with Diamond Select. So starting with articulation, starting from the top, you can see with his head looking down that he does look down quite a bit. His chin isn't going to touch his clavicle or his collarbone or anything, but his jaw does sit flush against his neck. And as you can see, he can't really look up, so you won't be getting him into any horizontal flying poses. His head looks up just a smidge above, looking straight, so basically not at all. And here it is basically from side profile, and you can see he can't look up at all, so his head articulation is severely lacking. The culprit for this is the poor implementation of range afforded by the ball peg, which has very little wiggle room, if any. He does have just a little bit of head bobble, and he does have full rotation. He has a nicely implemented diaphragm cut that allows for a smooth and wide range of articulation. He can bend in about that far, and bending backwards he has about this much range of motion. There is no waist cut, so you'll have to rely on that diaphragm joint to get all the rotation and twist as well. His arms extend out at the shoulder just an okay amount, not quite 90 degrees, but not horrible by any means. Elbows bend in at about 90, and hinges at the wrists, which will be hindered bending backwards by the flap of the top armored portion, which extends out a little. It is made of a flexible material, but I wouldn't stress it too much as over time you could severely warp it. Rotation points for the arm are located at the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder. The new hip joints that Diamond Select is using allows for a greater degree of motion, so you can get him to do a very nice split, which is highly unnecessary. Starting with his legs kicking backwards or rotated backwards at the hip joint, you can see that he has practically no play there. And that is due to how the butt portion of the armor hinders the legs from moving any further at the hips. Rotating or kicking forwards, however, you can get him to kick a little bit up. He does have upper thigh cut that allows for 360 degrees of rotation, and double jointed knees that allow for a good bend at the knees. Feet hinges at the ankles upwards and downwards with restrictions at the lower shin and calf armor. There are ankle rockers that are once again restricted by the lower portion of the legs, and the ankles also have rotation. At the bottom of the feet, we do have peg holes as well as painted repulsors, much like the hands. A word of warning about the joints. It seems all the joints are gray in color, and the paint on them does seem to wear down and strip quite easily and quickly, so they will begin to peel over time. Unfortunate, as they really stick out when they begin to. And for some size comparisons, here he is up against the Diamond Select nano-gauntlet Hulk figure I reviewed not too long ago. And here he is up against the other figure from this set, the armored Thanos figure. And here I have him compared to the Mark 50 Marvel Legends figure with a custom Tony Stark head. I don't have the Mark 85 Legends yet, so that's why I'm comparing him to this figure. I like the bulkiness of the Legends figure for sure. Interestingly, the gauntlet hand and snapping fingers hand fit perfectly on the Legends figure, and I'm going to take a guess that it fits perfectly fine on the Mark 85 Legends figure as well, but I don't have that figure to test it out, so... Here's just a closer look at the snapping hand attached on the Marvel Legends figure. Pretty cool that it fits, and a great added bonus if you happen to collect both. So that is it for this review/overview of the Diamond Select Marvel Select Iron Man Mark 85 figure. I'm using the arm cannon off my Marvel Legends figure here, which somewhat works okay, I guess. I'm sure the one off of the Select version works way better. This figure is a very cool looking figure with some articulation issues, especially with that head joint. At around $27 to $30, it's really going to be up to you whether or not this figure is really worth it, given the lack of accessories and issues it has, and also considering that it doesn't really go with anything since it is a 7-inch line figure. I find the larger 7-inch figures like Hulk and such fit a little more easier with the 6-inch lines, but these regular size figures are kind of in a class of their own. Even with the issues in articulation, I feel if this package included just a few more accessories, it would have definitely been a must-buy. But the way it is, it's really up to you. I might sound like I'm disappointed, but I really am not. I still think this is a very nice looking figure, and I'm just going to kind of have him off to the side against my Select Armored Thanos. I've already replaced my Build-A-Figure Professor Hulk with the Select Jumpsuit or nano-gauntlet version, so I'm leaving him out of this set. I'm not sure if there's going to be any more Endgame themed Select figures coming, but I feel this might be it. It's also cool we have an added bonus of being able to use the Infinity Stone hands on the Marvel Legends version, even if that is unintended. But I'm not so sure many people are going to be excited for this guy, but let me know what you guys think about this figure, whether or not you're going to pick him up, whether you want him or not. I'm curious, as I can see a whole lot of people not really caring for this one since the Legends version was actually pretty good already. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone who stuck around and watched this review/overview. If you like this review or you have anything you want to say or ask me about this figure or anything in general, please feel free to thumbs up this video and comment below. Please subscribe if you haven't already and hit the notification bell to get notifications of new videos. And I just want to say thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time on another episode of Stop Motion Anime Reviews.